Earlier today, a vehicular terror attack in southern East Jerusalem's Armon HaNatziv neighborhood claimed the lives of 1 male and 3 female soldiers and injured well over a dozen more people. 2 of the injured are said to be in critical condition. Magen David Adom paramedics and the Jerusalem police are reporting that the truck was driven into a number of pedestrians on the Armon HaNatziv promenade as the terrorist plowed through a group of soldiers exiting a tour bus. The terrorist, who is said to be from the nearby Jabal Mukaber neighborhood in Jerusalem, was reportedly killed by an armed civilian. A gag order on further details of the attack has been issued. We'll keep you as updated as possible. Earlier today, a vehicular terror attack in southern East Jerusalem's Armon HaNatziv neighborhood claimed the lives of 1 male and 3 female soldiers and injured well over a dozen more people. 2 of the injured are said to be in critical condition. Magen David Adom paramedics and the Jerusalem police are reporting that the truck was driven into a number of pedestrians on the Armon HaNatziv promenade as the terrorist plowed through a group of soldiers exiting a tour bus. The terrorist, who is said to be from the nearby Jabal Mukaber neighborhood in Jerusalem, was reportedly killed by an armed civilian. A gag order on further details of the attack has been issued. We'll keep you as updated as possible.
The United Nations says that at least 65,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled to Bangladesh from Myanmar amid a continued crackdown by the government in Rakhine State. The UN added that nearly a third of them have fled in the past week alone. The figure marks a sharp escalation in the number of Myanmar's Muslims fleeing a military campaign in Rakhine State. The new figures come on the same day the UN's Human Rights Envoy for Myanmar, Yanghee Lee, began a 12-day visit to investigate violence in the country. Rights groups say the operation has been marred by severe abuses that could amount to war crimes. The minority Muslim community has faced systematic persecution in a predominantly Buddhist nation, with reports of arson, rape, and killings. Okay, let's talk now to Tun Khin, president of the Burmese Rohingya Organization UK, who joins us to shed his thoughts on the Rohingya situation. So you have the UN Special Envoy here for Myanmar, Yanghee Lee, who has begun a 12-day visit to Myanmar. Do you think anything is going to come out of this when, even before the visit, so much evidence has pointed to the abuse that has taken place on the Rohingya Muslims?
I think we have to wait and see. It is too early to comment. But as far as what we have seen in the past, you know, UN Special Reporter Yanghee Lee have well highlighted the situation of Rohingya many times. But unfortunately, the government, they did not take any action at all. The government, they simply ignore what is happening in Rohingya situation in Arakan state. That is what so far we have seen. So I think it is time right now is we want to see international community effective action, practical action. What I want to emphasize here is.
Welcome back. Growing tensions on the high seas between the United States and Iran. A Navy destroyer firing multiple warning shots at Iranian attack boats speeding toward the U.S. ship in the Strait of Hormuz. It's just the latest act of aggression that's taken place in the past year. You all remember this. Last January, Iran detaining 10 American sailors whose patrol boats had strayed into Iranian waters. And then in August, another U.S. ship firing warning shots to avoid a collision with an Iranian naval boat after 4 close calls in 1 week alone. And then in September, Iran's Navy launched a new ship with a banner on its side saying the Persian Gulf is our house. General Jack Keane is the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War and also Fox News military analyst. General, welcome to you. We were talking about this earlier. You said this is simply another attempt to humiliate the United States. Where do you see this going with Iran?
Well, they're going to continue to do these acts of provocation because what they're really targeting on are the Arab Gulf states, our allies in the region. They want to demonstrate to them that Iranian is the dominant power in the Middle East. And the United States is no longer the most influential out-of-region power in the Middle East. And I think the evidence is pretty clear that they're in fact the case, because the relation, I just returned from the Middle East, Heather, a couple of weeks ago, and I can tell you it's indisputable that our allies feel, our Arab allies in the Middle East believe that the United States has let them down.
Throughout the country. Later today, the U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote against UN Resolution 2334 that condemned Israeli building policies. And a bipartisan coalition of senators has just introduced a similar measure demanding the UN bill be repealed. This is a first opportunity U.S. lawmakers have had to respond to what a joint statement condemns as the stunt pulled by the Obama White House to abstain rather than veto the UN bill last month. Congressional sponsors say the move hurt their ally Israel and made peace in the region even more difficult to achieve. The measure is widely expected to pass. Meanwhile, the bipartisan Senate bill that was just submitted demands 2334 be nullified or fundamentally altered so it's no longer one-sided and anti-Israel. The UN Security Council vote branded all Israeli building in Judea, Samaria, and part of Jerusalem to be illegal and called for an immediate halt in all such construction. But the majority of American legislators appear to be visibly siding with the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in firmly rejecting the bill. They're also insisting any final status resolution to the Palestinian conflict be negotiated directly between the parties, and that Washington oppose any attempts at imposing a solution proposed at the Paris summit that's set to open on January 15th. By the way, a new poll shows that most Americans really don't care one way or the other about the UN resolution. 36% of those polled say they have no opinion on the matter, followed by 35% who support it, while 28% said they oppose it.
Tonight, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is ramping up his rhetoric, using state media to threaten to test fire a long-range missile at any moment.
The intercontinental ballistic missile will be launched anytime and anywhere, determined by the Supreme Headquarters.
A U.S. intelligence official tells CNN to grab world attention, Kim Jong-un could time a provocation, like a missile test, to coincide with Donald Trump taking office, a missile capable of delivering a nuclear weapon to the U.S.
An intercontinental ballistic missile test launch preparation is in its last stage.
How close is Kim to having a deployable long-range missile? Analysts say gathering intelligence inside the secretive regime is difficult, and that Kim could have that ability now, or he could be maybe 3 years away. But U.S. officials and outside experts say there's a crucial part of that capability they believe the North Koreans haven't perfected yet.
Now, the unemployment crisis in the Eurozone shows no sign of ending, as the new data reveal that there are still around 16 million people of working age in the 19-country bloc who cannot find a job. Youth unemployment remains specifically high in Greece, Spain, Italy, and France. Jerome Hughes reports from the EU's de facto capital.
Job centres in most of the 19 Eurozone countries remain extremely busy 9 years after the 2008 economic collapse. Data just published by Eurostat, the EU's statistical office, shows that there are 20.4 million people of working age in the EU who are unemployed, 15.8 million of whom live in the Eurozone. Youth unemployment rates are still very high in several countries. We asked citizens to share their views on the social consequences of the crisis.
A lot of young people think about suicide. A lot of young people think to the crime, to sell drugs, and that's a big problem for the society.
People don't even have money to buy heating, so indeed we know that it's not the same Europe that maybe our parents had experienced, something that was evolving and getting better. There's a stagnation for sure.
According to the latest official statistics, the overall youth unemployment rate has gone down. But in Greece, it is still running at 46.1%. In Spain, it is at 44.4%, Italy 39.4%, and France 25.9%. We asked the European Commission if EU member states should be doing more to tackle the problem.
Of course, a lot of more efforts are needed, and we're working on this. But as this extensive report shows, and as also the figures show, when you look at the youth unemployment figures, that it's going at least in the right direction.
Huge unemployment levels in the Eurozone have resulted in people feeling disempowered and let down by the EU's political establishment. This Euroscepticism could become even more apparent when government elections take place in several countries later this year. According to political scientists, it is a trend that represents a real threat to the future of the EU. Jerome Hughes, Press TV, Brussels.
The nuclear-capable Babur 3 was fired from an underwater mobile platform in the Indian Ocean and successfully hit its flag target. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif congratulated the nation and military forces on its first successful launch. He also said that Pakistan always maintains a policy of peaceful coexistence and that this test is a step towards reinforcing policy of credible minimum deterrence. The Babur 3 is a sea-based variant of the ground-launched Babur 2 missile, which was tested in December.
Saudi Arabia, its mercenaries and forces loyal to ex-President Mansour Hadi have faced setbacks at the hands of the Yemeni army and popular committees in their offensive over the past week. They aim to capture coastal region of Dhubab and the strategic Bab el-Mandab Strait, as well as the port of Mocha.
The latest victories against the Saudi forces are the outcome of enormous efforts by the revolutionaries. Yemeni fighters don't have any other options. They either live victorious or die a martyr.
Press TV's team has talked to people in the western Hodeidah province who have witnessed a fierce fighting in recent days. They say Saudi-backed forces want the coastal Tihama region in order to partition Yemen.
We're willing to fight by all means because we believe in our just cause. We are a united nation.
They are dreaming of dividing Yemen into several federal states, but they have not achieved anything on the ground.
According to observers, the plot to partition the country into 6 federal regions was discussed during UN-brokered national dialogue. The idea that was first proposed by former President Hadi has been rejected by Yemeni movements and parties. Observers believe Riyadh waged the war on Yemen to impose US-Saudi will, but to no avail. People in the coastal areas of Al-Hodeidah are outraged by the US and Saudi plots to divide Yemenis. They say despite the dire humanitarian situation, they will stand against the US proxy war waged by Saudi Arabia. Muhammad Al-Attab, Press TV, from Al-Hodeidah province.
The DPRK's threats and provocations, including the launch of an ICBM, are an action that damages stability and peace in the international community. If the DPRK disregards our warnings and launches an ICBM, it will face more powerful and thorough sanctions and pressure by the international community.
The South Korean spokesman said the DPRK may use a variety of events to celebrate anniversaries scheduled for this year without elaborating on details. He also said the DPRK indeed has the capability to fire an ICBM, such as the KN-08 or its enhanced version, the KN-14. Both missiles can be fired from a mobile launcher. On January the 1st, the DPRK's top leader, Kim Jong-un, announced that his country was close to a test launch, while blaming the United States' hostile policy against Pyongyang's arms development.
Thousands have attended the funeral ceremony for former Iranian President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani at Tehran University in the Iranian capital. He died aged 82 on January 8th. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei performed prayers at the ceremony, and people came to pay their final respects. The former president will be buried in the shrine of Ayatollah Khomeini, the first supreme leader who led Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution. The country will observe 3 days of national mourning, and all government institutions will be closed today for the funeral ceremony. USS Mahan fired at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps vessels after they closed in at high speed and disregarded repeated radio requests to slow down. Before the warning shots, the Mahan also fired flares, and a US Navy helicopter dropped a smoke float. Last September, US President-elect Donald Trump had vowed that any Iranian vessels found harassing the US Navy in the Persian Gulf would be shot out of the water. There has been no immediate comment from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Meanwhile, the United States has briefly stationed its troops in Poland as part of an ongoing NATO operation to deploy forces along Russian borders. Now, the troops landed in Wrocław in southwestern Poland. Nearly 2,800 tanks and other pieces of U.S. military hardware are also being transferred from Germany. A NATO general said the deployment was part of the military alliance's efforts to deter what he called Russian aggression. Troops are said to be dispatched to 6 other countries close to Russia's western border. Now, the current deployment is part of a NATO mission, which was launched in 2014 after Crimea rejoined Russia. Moscow has repeatedly called NATO's eastward expansion and its troop deployment along the Russian borders as aggressive and provocative. Crossing over to Montreal, joined by Michel Chossudovsky, from the Center for Research on Globalization. Thank you so much for being with us. What exactly is going on? Does the U.S. want to actually basically go to war with Russia, or how do you assess this?
Well, I would describe it as political insanity, because the outgoing president, Barack Obama, is implementing what is called Operation Atlantic Resolve against Russia. Now, this Operation Atlantic Resolve is not something which is recent. It's been ongoing in the last few months, but it coincides with the accusations directed against Russia regarding the hacking of the U.S. elections. And what we are witnessing is, first of all, the United States is sending very large quantities of tanks and military hardware, coupled with the deployment of troops right at Russia's doorstep. But in turn, America's European allies under NATO command are also deploying tens and thousands of troops to Russia's border. And the irony is that this operation is described as a peacekeeping operation.
The Iranian parliament has approved a bill to increase the country's defense spending to 5% of the country's total budget. 173 lawmakers voted in favor of the measure. Legislation includes expanding Iran's missile capabilities and calls for strengthening the air defense power within short, medium, and long ranges. The bill also requires the government to strengthen Iran's electronic warfare and cyber defense capabilities and demands Iran's navy to be further developed. Lawmakers said the measure is necessary to preserve Iran's national security and interests and to fight terrorist groups. Legislation is part of the nation's 6th Economic Development Plan. Iran has managed to considerably enhance its defense capabilities. Tehran has always declared that its military might poses no threat to regional countries. The Islamic Republic says that its defense doctrine is entirely based on deterrence.